What about if we talk today about the translanguaging notion as a concept? Where does this concept come from, and who was the first person who mentioned this idea? This is really important in order to understand that translanguaging is not a process just to get the second language, but a process in order to get proficiency in both languages at the same time. In order to develop this idea, I will take into the account the article Translanguaging, Origins and Development from School to Street and Beyond. So let's be focused on this concept, but not just to the educational approach or the educational environment, but also from our daily life and how we use both languages all the time. And well, when we are teachers, we have the opportunity to know and to notice the student process and how they use the first language in order to get the second one. And they are all the time traveling between both words, let's say words, and that is why this great idea comes from a teacher. And the teacher is St. Williams. He was a teacher from the University of Wales, and he was promoted to this university because of that idea of translanguaging. He mentioned this idea in the 80s. And something that he said, it is that translanguaging is something natural. It is not something we have to maybe create during the teaching practices. It's something that is there and that we can use in order to develop those ideas and also the students' abilities. So this is great because as teachers we can get identified by these practices and we can see this in our daily lives. Well, and let us talk a little bit about input and output. The first time that I listened the word input was from a business conference, and they were talking about input as the resources we use in order to get a result. Let us say we are teaching a class and we have the board, the markers, we have a computer, the students, the language, paper, and pencils. But finally, we choose just the board and markers as our tools in order to teach. Those will be our input because those are the resources we are finally using in order to get our output. And when I had to use this concept input into the educational environment, I always think about that. Why am I using this input, these resources in order to get the result? And what is my result? So into the article they were talking about the switching between input and output. And normally people think that the input is the first language and the output is the second one. But if we think really about this idea, that is wrong, because under the translanguaging conception, we are learning both languages at the same time and we are getting proficient in both languages. We are not just using one to scaffolding the other one. So when we really approach this concept of input from the business idea, we can get better that idea into the educational environment. In 1983, Jacobson comes with the idea of maximizing learning. And how can we do this? According to three perspectives. The first one is making meaning. And when we are using translanguaging, we are not just getting meaning from other people, but we have also the opportunity to make meaning. So that's great. The second one is shaping experiences. And if we have the opportunity to travel between both languages, we also have to build experiences, and we are acting a language. We are not just talking a language but acting it. And the third one is gaining understanding and knowledge. So we can understand the same information in both languages, and we are also learning that we have like different perspectives in each language. So that's great. As teachers, we can understand this as communicating something effectively, and we can teach this in order students can build their ideas in order to communicate something, to interact with others, to interact with themselves. Because when we teach a language based on grammar and based on just the form, we are skipping this really great part of the language experience. So what about if we use this translanguaging idea in order to create a personality and a research person into the students, and they can see the richness in their own language and the second one as well. As a conclusion, let me talk a little bit about the advantages. I was reading this article and they mention a lot of advantages of this concept, but I want to mention one because I got identified with it. And is that feeling, or have you ever feel so excited because you're getting the second language, and you go home so excited and you start watching movies and listen music in that second language, and you are understanding the meaning and the words, and also you start like telling stories or even talking with yourself in the second language, and you're like all the time there with the second language, and you start talking all the time in that language, and you make that second language your own word. It happens, and that's great because you feel excited and you feel that that language and that research is useful and fruitful also. But this translanguaging idea, it's great because we can do the same with the native language as well, not just with the second one. So this great advantage, it is not just for learners, it's also for teachers. Because if we show to the students that they can get excited and get like encouraged in order to get both languages, they will use their own time, their free time, in order to approach those languages, because language is something that we use all the time, even when we're talking or thinking. So it's great they can get excited through the process because they can learn faster. And normally when we give them the opportunity to go home and search different resources, they have two things. The first one, they can learn according to what they like, even if they want to listen something or watch something or read something. So they are using what they like. And the other thing is they can use what they learn, and they are also sharing this idea with other people, and this promote communication in an effective way. And when the student come comes to the classroom with those ideas, we also have the opportunity to learn from them as teachers, and we can also improve our language proficiency as teachers from our own students. So this is not just something to think as a student, but as teacher also. So let us try to involve or to embody this idea into the classroom as well, not just because it is a practice. No, it is not a practice. It is a natural thing we can take advantage and we can use all the time in order to make the process easier but also fruitful.